Before we get started, hit the comments and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is over there. Whether you're catching sunrise in Nairobi, burning midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France, I want to hear from you. Don't just watch silently, let me know where in the world you are. Now let's dive into the story. The hangar at Naval Station Argent Point smelled like oil, salt, and old metal. Steel beams rose overhead like ribs of a giant animal. Rows of officers stood in pressed uniforms, shoes aligned with ruler-straight precision. At the center of it all stood Admiral Corwin Hale, a man whose voice had sent fleets into war and brought them home. His eyes scanned the room until they landed on the old man near the back, thin shoulders, worn blazer, shoes dulled by years instead of polish. A veteran badge hung crooked on his chest. Someone had seated him there by mistake. Or maybe as a joke. A few younger officers exchanged quiet smirks. The Admiral paused, then stepped off the podium and walked straight toward him. The room stiffened. This wasn't part of the ceremony. The old man's name was Elias Vorn. He hadn't been on a base like this in decades. The lights felt too bright. The silence pressed on his ears. His hands, spotted and rough, rested on a cane carved from dark wood. Each notch on it meant something. Each one hurt. Admiral Hale stopped in front of him, close enough that Elias could see the faint scar under the Admiral's jaw. Combat scar. Hale looked down, not unkindly, but with a sharp focus that made men straighten their backs without knowing why. "Sir," the Admiral said loud enough for everyone to hear, "records show you served off books. No public commendations. No listed unit." Pause. "What was your call sign?" A soft chuckle rippled through the crowd. "Old man. No unit. No call sign." Elias felt the heat rise in his neck. He lifted his eyes slowly. They were pale, almost gray and steady as stone. For a moment he didn't answer. The hangar hummed with distant generators and the faint cry of gulls outside. Elias remembered other rooms. Darker rooms. Rooms where names were never spoken. He swallowed once. His voice, when it came, was quiet but clear. "Redeemer," he said. Just one word. It didn't echo. It didn't need to. The reaction was instant. Smiles vanished. A commander near the front went rigid. Someone dropped a pen. Admiral Hale's face drained of color as if all the blood had fled at once. The silence didn't just return, it deepened, thick and heavy like the air before an explosion. Admiral Hale took a step back. His hand trembled before he caught it. He stared at Elias as if seeing a ghost walk out of a closed grave. Around them, officers shifted, confused, sensing something had gone terribly off script. The Admiral opened his mouth, then closed it again. His voice, when it finally came, was low. "Careful. That call sign," he said, "was buried." Elias's grip tightened on the cane. He had hoped never to hear that word spoken aloud again. Not here. Not like this. A red warning light flickered faintly above the hangar door as if the base itself remembered. Admiral Hale straightened, then did something no one expected. He raised his hand. "Clear the room," he ordered. "Sure." Immediate gasps followed. As officers rushed to obey, Elias felt the past surge forward. The name had been spoken. And once spoken, it could not be taken back. The room emptied fast, boots echoing away until only Elias Vorn and Admiral Corwin Hale remained. The hangar doors slid shut with a deep metallic groan, sealing them inside a bubble of old air and older memories. Hale didn't sit. Neither did Elias. The Admiral studied the cane first, the dark wood, the careful notches, then lifted his eyes. "You shouldn't be here," Hale said. It wasn't a threat. It was a warning. Elias almost smiled. Almost. Long before Argent Point, before medals and ceremonies, Elias had been a boy in Dryfall, a desert town that lived on dust and promises. The sun there burned everything honest. His father, Marek Vorn, worked nights at the rail yard and taught Elias 2 rules. Keep your word and protect the weak even when no one is watching. Elias learned to listen more than he spoke. He learned to move quietly. When recruiters came, they didn't see much. A thin kid. Quiet. Average scores. But one man did, Commander Ilias Rowe eyes sharp as broken glass. Rowe watched Elias fix a jammed engine without tools, hands steady under pressure. "You don't panic," Rowe said. Elias shrugged. "There's no time for it." Training stripped him down to bone and breath. He learned that pain could be ignored and fear could be folded away like a map. The unit had no name. No patch. No paperwork. They met in rooms with no windows and flew on planes that pretended not to exist. Rowe handed out call signs only after the first mission. One by one. Elias went last. The team had lost a hostage, too late, too quiet. Elias didn't talk about it. He went back in alone. He brought the hostage out alive. When he returned, Rose studied him for a long time. "You don't just survive," Rose said. "You pull others back from the edge." He paused. Redeemer. The name stuck like a scar. Missions blurred into nights of rain and sand. Elias learned the cost of silence. He watched teammates make choices that never left them. He made his own. Once in Karsak Valley, a boy ran into the line of fire. Elias moved without thinking, shielding him, taking a round that burned like white fire. He finished the mission anyway. Later, alone, he shook so hard he couldn't hold water. He didn't tell anyone. Redeemers didn't ask for mercy. Years passed. The unit disappeared. Orders changed. Files burned. Names erased. Elias came home to Dryfall and found it smaller than he remembered. His father was gone. The rail yard closed. The town forgot him quickly. He took a job repairing boats by the coast, hands always busy, mind always elsewhere. At night he carved the cane. One notch for each soul he brought back. One deeper notch for those he didn't. He learned how to live with ghosts without letting them speak. Now in the hangar, Admiral Hale finally broke the quiet. "There was an operation," Hale said, careful. "A classified failure. We lost people. Records say the Redeemer didn't make it out." Elias met his gaze. "Records lie." Hale's jaw tightened. "Why come now?" Elias looked at the red light above the door. He thought of the boy in Karsak Valley. Of Rose's eyes. "Because something buried is moving," he said. "And when it wakes, it doesn't care who it hurts." The Admiral exhaled slowly, the weight of command settling back onto his shoulders. "Then we have a problem," Hale said. Elias nodded once. Outside, a gull screamed. Somewhere deep in the base, an alarm clicked on, soft at first. The past wasn't done with them yet. Admiral Hale motioned toward a steel table bolted to the floor. Elias sat slowly, joints stiff, cane resting against his knee. Hale stayed standing, as if sitting might mean admitting something he wasn't ready to face. "The program was shut down," Hale said. "Burned to ash. Anyone connected was either reassigned or buried." He hesitated. "Including Commander Rowe." Elias felt the words like a dull blade. He nodded once. He had already known. "You always knew before they told you." The flashback came hard and sudden. Blackwater Drift, a coastal slum stitched together with rusted roofs and narrow alleys. Rain poured sideways. The mission was simple on paper. Extract a family targeted for execution. But the intel was wrong. The enemy wasn't leaving. They were waiting. Gunfire shattered the night. Elias remembered Rose shouting orders, calm even as chaos bloomed. Then the blast. Smoke. Screams swallowed by rain. Elias dragged two teammates out. Went back in for Rowe. The building collapsed before he reached him. The radio crackled once, then went dead. Later, someone higher up called it acceptable loss. Back in the hangar, Hale cleared his throat. "After Blackwater Drift, something changed," he said. "You went dark." Missions continued, but without oversight. Elias's lips pressed thin. "We were told to finish what was started." Hale didn't deny it. He couldn't. Orders came down wrapped in silence and urgency. The unit became a rumor inside a rumor. And Redeemer became something else. A last resort. One mission returned sharper than the rest. Operation Pale Harbor. Hostages. Children. A dockyard wired to explode. Elias had disobeyed a direct order, pulled the team back to save civilians first. The bomb went off anyway, killing the target and wiping evidence clean. The brass was furious. Elias expected court-martial. Instead, the unit vanished overnight. Files sealed. Names erased. He was given a plane ticket and nothing else. No thanks. No blame. Just a door closing softly behind him. "Why didn't you fight it?" Hale asked quietly. Elias stared at the table. "Because fighting leaves marks," he said. "And the children were alive." Hale nodded, the truth landing heavy. He finally Saturday, "There's something you need to see." He tapped a tablet. Images bloomed, satellite shots, grainy but clear enough. Armed men moving equipment through an old shipping yard. A familiar symbol painted on crates. Elias's breath caught. The symbol was crude, almost careless. But he knew it. "They copied it," Elias said. "Or someone taught them." Hale's voice dropped. 2 weeks ago, a convoy vanished near Port Kestrel. No survivors. No ransom. He swiped again. A still frame froze on a man's face, older, scarred, eyes cold. Elias recognized him immediately. Corin Bale, he said. The name tasted bitter. Bale had been logistics. Smart. Bitter. He'd watched friends die and learned the wrong lesson. He wanted power without rules, Elias said. Rose said he'd burn the house to stay warm. Hale leaned back. Intel says Bale is calling his Operation Redemption Front. The word hung there poisoned. Elias stood steadier than he felt. He's using the name to draw ghosts, he said. Men who think they were forgotten. Hale's gaze hardened. And you? Elias picked up his cane. I'm here to close a door, he said. The right way. A siren wailed faintly outside, a drill or something else, hard to tell. Hale rose with him. I can't officially sanction this, the Admiral said. Elias nodded. You never did. As they moved toward the door, Hale stopped him. Why tell me now? Elias paused. He thought of Dryfall. Of the boy in the rain. Of a call sign buried too deep to stay quiet. Because silence saves lives, he said. Until it doesn't. The door slid open. The red light went dark. And somewhere far away a wrong man smiled, knowing a legend had heard his name. Night wrapped Argent Point in cold blue light as Elias walked the outer corridor with Hale beside him. The base felt different now, quieter, watchful. Like it knew an old wound had been touched. Hale led him past locked doors and blinking panels to a small briefing room with no windows. A single bulb buzzed overhead. On the table sat a folded uniform. Old style. Unmarked. Elias didn't reach for it. Not yet. Hale tapped the wall and the room came alive with maps and timelines. Bale didn't just resurface, he said. He rebuilt. Dots flared along shipping routes, coastal towns, forgotten airstrips. He's recruiting veterans who fell through cracks. Men with skills and grudges. Elias studied the spread. He saw patterns others would miss, supply chains that doubled back, dead zones that hid movement. He's staging something loud, Elias said. A cleansing. Hale nodded. A strike on Port Kestrel during Founders Week. Crowds. Cameras. Panic. Elias felt a familiar tightening in his chest. Children. Always children. A flashback cut in uninvited. Dryfall years ago, after a dust storm buried half the town. Elias had pulled a neighbor's kid from a collapsed porch. The boy cried until Elias sang an old rail yard tune his father used to hum. The crying stopped. Back in the room, Elias exhaled. Bale wants to be seen, he said. He wants to prove the old ghosts still matter. Hale folded his arms. Then you matter. Elias finally picked up the uniform. The fabric was heavier than he remembered. Honest weight. They moved fast after that. A quiet jet lifted before dawn, slicing over dark water toward Port Kestrel, a harbor city painted with murals and cranes. From above it looked peaceful. Too peaceful. Hale stayed behind, officially. Unofficially, he handed Elias a small comm one channel, he said. If you need it. Elias nodded. If I use it, he said, things go wrong. Hale didn't argue. On the ground, Elias blended in with dock workers and vendors setting up banners. Music tested speakers. The air smelled of salt and fried dough. He felt eyes on him and trusted that feeling. He found Bale's trail in the small things. A crate scuffed the wrong way, a guard too still. In a storage shed he found proof, timers wired to fuel tanks, neat and patient. He disarmed 3 before a voice spoke behind him. You always did like working alone. Elias turned slowly. Corin Bale stepped into the light, older but sharp, smile thin as wire. You shouldn't use the name, Elias said. Bale shrugged. Names are tools. He gestured. Men emerged, blocking exits. Elias counted. Calculated. Bale leaned closer. You vanished, Bale said. Left us to rot. Elias met his eyes. I stayed to save who I could. Bale's smile cracked. Lies we tell ourselves. The first punch came fast. Elias absorbed it, moved, dropped a man with a short strike. Chaos erupted. Shouts. A gun clattered. Elias fought like memory, efficient, controlled, protecting space. He reached the timers again, hands steady. Bale lunged, rage flashing. Elias blocked, countered, pinned him long enough to rip the final wire free. The countdown died. Outside, fireworks boomed, test shots for the celebration, masking the scuffle. Police sirens rose, closer now. Bale broke free, stumbling back. This isn't over, he spat. Elias stood between Bale and the door. It ends when you stop hurting people, Elias said. Bale laughed and vanished into smoke and noise. By sunrise, Port Kestrel cheered, unaware. Elias watched from a rooftop, uniform folded beside him. The city lived. That was enough for now. His comm crackled once. Hale's voice tight with relief. Status. Elias looked at the waking harbor. The fire's out, he said. But embers travel. He turned away, already moving. The name had been misused. And that meant Chapter 5 would be louder. Elias didn't sleep after Port Kestrel. He moved through backstreets as morning crowds replaced night crews, his mind replaying Bale's eyes, too calm, too sure. Embers travel. He knew that better than most. By noon he was miles inland, in a rented room above a closed bakery where the air smelled like old sugar and dust. He checked the locks twice, then sat on the edge of the bed and carved one careful notch into the cane. Not for Bale. For the people who would have died if the timers had reached zero. The comm buzzed once. Hale's voice came clipped, controlled. Bale slipped a perimeter, he said. We lost him near the rail yards. Elias pictured rails branching like veins, carrying men and weapons wherever money pointed. He'll split, Elias said. Seed fear in smaller places. Hale paused. There's another thing. Bale released something. Elias closed his eyes. Names? Hale exhaled. Partial files. Photos. He's telling veterans they were used and erased. He's inviting them to be seen. That night, Elias went where the hurt would gather first. A half-lit bar outside Raven's Cut, where uniforms used to drink and forget. The door creaked. Music died. Conversation stalled when they saw him. A man with a limp stood too fast. You're dead, he said. Elias nodded. I was quiet, he answered. The man's jaw worked. They said Redeemer would come. Elias felt the weight of it, the hope and the anger tangled tight. I came to stop a lie, he said. Not to start a war. A woman near the back spoke, voice thin. My brother followed Bale, she said. He thinks it's justice. Elias met her gaze. Justice doesn't hide behind crowds, he said. It protects them. He left before the room could decide what he was to them, myth or warning. The ambush came at dawn on a service road lined with scrub and broken fences. Elias felt it a second too late. Wire snapped, flash, a concussive slap that threw him sideways. He rolled, breath punched from his lungs. Figures closed in. He moved on instinct, using the ditch for cover, cane swinging like a third arm. A round grazed his shoulder, hot and shallow. He pressed forward anyway, disarming one attacker, dragging him down, using his weight to shield from fire. It ended fast. It always did when choices were simple. He sat afterward, shaking, tasting iron. The attacker coughed, eyes wide. Bale said you abandoned us, the man whispered. Elias bound the wound and shook his head. I stayed, he said. So you could go home. Sirens approached. Elias vanished into brush, pain blooming late. By evening the story had spread. Redeemer seen, Redeemer bleeding, Redeemer still standing. Bale wanted that. Elias knew it. He called Hale. He's baiting me, Elias said. Hale didn't deny it. We traced a meet, Hale said. Asterisk asterisk hollow bridge asterisk asterisk. Tonight. Elias pictured the place. Concrete ribs over black water, echoing footsteps. He'll bring followers, Elias said. And cameras. Hale's voice softened. You don't have to, Elias cut him off. I do. Under the bridge, lights flickered like dying stars. Bale waited, flanked by men with hard smiles. Look at you, Bale called. Still carrying everyone else's weight. Elias stepped into the light. Drop it, he said. Let them walk. Bale laughed. Say the name, he taunted. Let them hear it. Elias felt the eyes, the hunger for meaning. He lifted the cane. Redeemer, he said, not as a badge but a promise. The word settled. Some men shifted. One step back. The fight was brutal and brief. Elias took hits. Gave ground. Held the line where the light was worst and the water closest. Police sirens wailed, real this time. Bale tried to run. Elias caught him at the edge, hands locked, both breathing hard. It ends, Elias said. Bale snarled. It ends when they remember. Elias looked past him at the men choosing, at the bridge holding. They remember, he said. What matters? Bale fell. Cuffs clicked. The crowd broke. Elias leaned on the rail, blood dripping into black water, feeling the cost settle into his bones. The name had been spoken again. This time it took something with it, and gave something back. Hollow Bridge emptied the way storms do, fast, loud, then gone. Blue lights washed the concrete in cold pulses as police took Bale away, his shouts swallowed by engines and radios. Elias stayed where he was, hands resting on the rail, blood tapping a slow rhythm into the river below. Each drop felt like a question. How much more could a name take before it broke the man carrying it? Paramedics approached, cautious, unsure if he would vanish again. One young medic met his eyes and froze. "Sir," she said softly, "you're hurt." Elias nodded, finally feeling it. The ache in his shoulder burned deeper now, and his ribs protested with every breath. He let them wrap him, let them guide him to a stretcher. As they lifted, he caught sight of the men who had followed Bale. Some watched in silence, shame written plain. Others had already turned away, lighter somehow. Choice mattered. It always did. At St. Maro's infirmary, fluorescent lights hummed like insects. Elias lay still while stitches closed skin and pain dulled to a manageable throb. Admiral Hale appeared near dawn, jacket unbuttoned, eyes rimmed red from a night without sleep. He stood at the foot of the bed, unsure what rank meant here. "Bale's talking," Hale said. "Trying to trade names for leverage." Elias stared at the ceiling. "He won't give you the ones that matter," he said. "He doesn't know them." Hale hesitated. "The press caught wind of Redeemer," he said. "They're circling." Elias turned his head. "Keep it quiet," he said. "Names save lives only when whispered." Hale nodded. "There's more," he said. "People are coming forward. Veterans. Families. They're asking about you." Elias closed his eyes. The weight returned, familiar and heavy. "Tell them the truth," he said. "I wasn't special. I just didn't leave." The next days blurred. Word spread despite the best efforts to cage it. A woman left a folded note on his windowsill, "Thanks," and signed. A boy drew a bridge with a stick figure standing in the light and slipped it under the door. Elias kept the drawing, fingers tracing the crayon lines. He remembered being that age, believing men could be fixed by bravery alone. On the third night, a nurse whispered that someone was asking for him. Elias followed the sound of uneven steps to a quiet room. The man waiting had a familiar limp. Raven's cut. He stood stiff, eyes wet. "My brother came home," the man said. He dropped his phone and ran. Elias nodded once. "Tell him to stay home," he said. "That's the win." The man swallowed and shook Elias's hand, gripping hard like he might fall otherwise. Pain sharpened memory. Elias dreamed of Commander Rowe, of rain on broken roofs, of a voice on a dead radio saying, "Finish it right." He woke before dawn and carved a small notch into the cane, not for loss but for restraint. For choosing not to end Bale at the edge of the water. When he was cleared to leave, Hale met him outside. The sky was pale, the air clean after rain. "You could disappear again," Hale said. "We can make it happen." Elias adjusted the strap of his bag. "Disappear doesn't fix what's awake," he said. Hale studied him. "Then what?" Elias looked toward the road. "Then I teach the difference between being remembered and being used." A convoy passed, flags snapping. Somewhere, a camera clicked. Elias didn't look. He walked on, cane steady, name heavy but honest, for now. Elias returned to Dry Fall by nightfall, the town unchanged yet hollow. Dust rose from cracked roads as he stepped from the bus, the evening wind carrying faint echoes of the rail yard whistle his father once blew. He walked past shuttered storefronts, memories clinging to him like smoke. Children still played in the alleys, oblivious to ghosts that had walked before them. Elias felt a strange weight, not from his shoulder or the cuts from Hollow Bridge, but from the eyes that now remembered him, even if they didn't know it yet. Inside the old family home, empty and quiet, he sat on the worn wooden floor. The walls still smelled faintly of coal and sawdust, faint reminders of his father's labor and lessons. He traced the beams with his fingers, remembering how his father had said, "Names carry power, son. Guard them well." Elias realized that Redeemer was more than a call sign. It was a promise, a burden, and a warning. A name that had saved some and condemned others. He could feel the quiet judgment of every life he'd touched, every shadow he'd left behind. A sudden knock at the door broke the silence. Elias didn't move at first, unsure if he wanted human contact. Then the knock came again, insistent. He opened the door to see a young man, perhaps 17, with trembling hands and an old, folded photograph. "You're Redeemer, right?" the boy asked, voice tight. Elias nodded, silent. The boy held out the photo. It was of a child and a woman tied up on a dock, smoke curling in the background. The boy's eyes brimmed with tears. "My father," he said, "you saved him." "That you?" His words broke. Elias knelt, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. "I saved him," he said simply, swallowing a memory of rain and gunfire. "And others? That's all I can do. Outside, shadows shifted under flickering street lamps. Bale's operatives hadn't been caught entirely. Some had melted into networks of desperation and greed, ready to rise again. Elias knew it. That realization tightened his chest. But he also knew something else. He had seen the cost, felt the edge of silence break over him, and survived it. He had a name now, but it wasn't for him. It belonged to those he protected. Each step forward meant remembering that, even when the world wanted to forget. By midnight, Elias had lit a small fire in the hearth. The photo sat beside him, the boy's father safe because of choices made in shadows, unseen. The cane rested against the table, the notches catching firelight. Outside, the wind whispered through dry fall like a warning, or perhaps a benediction. He couldn't stop what was coming entirely, but he could prepare. Every name he carried, every life redeemed, was a reminder that courage didn't fade, it endured. And for the first time in years, Elias allowed himself a quiet smile. The name had power. Redeemer was more than history, it was now. Tomorrow he would begin tracking Bale's remaining network. Tonight, he would let the silence stretch, knowing that even shadows, when faced, could be turned to light. He whispered to the room, to the walls, to the ghosts, not tonight. Not anymore, By the time dawn broke over Raven's Cut, the town smelled of smoke and salt, a reminder that shadows never sleep. Elias moved silently along narrow alleys, cane tapping faintly against cobblestones. Word had come in overnight, Bale's remaining operatives had regrouped, and a convoy was moving toward the abandoned Grayson docks, where civilians and crews were still vulnerable. He didn't hesitate. Every step he took felt like a drumbeat, counting down to a storm he had been chasing for years. The docks were quiet, deceptively so. Stacks of crates loomed like silent soldiers. The water reflected the first orange of morning, interrupted by ripples of movement. A guard patrolling, another adjusting crates, the distant hum of engines. Elias crouched behind a stack, observing patterns he knew instinctively. Bale's men were disciplined, trained like ghosts themselves. But ghosts can bleed. And so can Redeemer. He inhaled, feeling the ache in his ribs and shoulder flare. Pain sharpened focus. Flashback cut through memory, the night in Carsick Valley, the boy in the line of fire, his own hands steady as he pulled him to safety. That same instinct now guided him. Every movement was precise, every breath measured. One by one he neutralized the perimeter silently, knocking out men with the minimum force needed to survive. He avoided unnecessary damage, avoided the temptation to let rage lead. This wasn't vengeance, it was survival, protection. Suddenly a shout broke the rhythm. Bale had arrived, flanked by 3 armed men, eyes sharp and cruel. "Thought you could hide, Redeemer?" he snarled, voice carrying over the docks. Elias rose slightly, revealing himself, cane in hand. "I'm not hiding," he said. "I'm ending this." Bale smiled, cold and thin, stepping closer. "Ending things? You misunderstand. I'm just beginning. Names aren't enough. Power demands proof." His men circled, calculating. Elias counted, calculated. Time slowed, but only for a heartbeat. The fight exploded like a storm. Bale's men attacked simultaneously. Elias moved like water, flowing from one strike to the next, using his cane, his weight, the momentum of his body. A fist clipped him, sending a searing pain up his ribs. He gritted his teeth and pressed forward, taking down another assailant before they could fire. Metal clanged, wood splintered, cries of effort and surprise echoed. Amid the chaos, Elias caught Bale charging with a metal pipe. He sidestepped, delivered a strike to the elbow, disarming him. Bale stumbled, rage mixing with disbelief. "You don't understand the rules," Bale spat, wiping blood from his brow. Elias leaned close, voice low but firm. "I know the rules. And you broke them." He pushed Bale against a stack of crates, cuffs snapping around his wrists before the man could react. Bale's face twisted with fury and fear. "This isn't over," he hissed, but Elias ignored him. Outside, sirens screamed in the distance, carrying the promise of backup. Elias turned to the men, now subdued and bound, eyes wide with fear and respect. "Go home," he said. "Before the world teaches you what I already know." Some nodded, shaking, silently retreating. Others stared at him as if seeing a ghost for the first time. Elias didn't flinch. The docks were quiet again, save for the waves lapping against pilings, the morning sun slicing through smoke and mist. Alone at the edge of the water, Elias leaned on his cane. Blood still tinged his clothes, ribs screamed, but a weight lifted. The storm had passed, at least for now. Yet he knew the name would never truly rest. Redeemer was spoken aloud, and now it carried meaning, fear, respect, and a promise. A promise that those who hide behind cruelty would always meet someone who remembers. As he watched the sun rise fully over Raven's Cut, Elias whispered to himself, almost inaudible, "Not for me. For them." The river reflected the light back at him, pure and unbroken. And for the first time in years he felt the faintest trace of peace. Night fell heavy over Grayson Docks, the air thick with fog and the scent of salt and diesel. Even after the skirmish at dawn, Elias didn't rest. Bale's network still lurked in shadows, and he knew one final confrontation was inevitable. Every step he took along the piers echoed like a drumbeat of warning. His cane tapped against the weathered wood, each strike a reminder: Redeemer was alive and nothing he carried could be buried again. The flashback hit hard as he approached the warehouse at the far end of the docks. The night in Blackwater Drift, the fire, the screams, the team trapped. He had lost more than men. He had lost innocence, and every mission since had been an attempt to redeem what couldn't be restored. The weight returned now, coiling in his chest like a living thing. He exhaled slowly. Every breath mattered. Every movement mattered. And tonight the end would come. Inside the warehouse, Bale awaited, flanked by the last loyal operatives, all armed and waiting. Lights flickered overhead, shadows dancing across crates like phantom soldiers. Bale's eyes gleamed, almost amused. "I hoped you'd come alone," he said. "I wanted to see if Redeemer was a myth or a man." Elias stepped into the light, cane steady, heartbeat silent but fierce. "I'm very real," he said. "And you're finished." The fight erupted immediately. Bullets ricocheted off metal. Fists collided with bone. Elias moved like a shadow, precise, merciless, protecting space while disabling his enemies with careful, calculated strikes. He didn't waste anger, he used it. One operative fell. Another tried to flank him. Elias pivoted, elbow to jaw, cane smashing the forearm holding a knife. Bale lunged with a crowbar, eyes wild with desperation, but Elias blocked, twisted, and delivered a strike that sent Bale crashing into crates. "Enough!" Elias shouted. His voice carried over the chaos, raw and commanding. "This ends tonight, Bale. No one else will die for your pride." Bale staggered to his feet, face bloodied but defiant. "You don't get it," he hissed. "Names are power, Redeemer. People follow them. They obey them. You left your mark." Elias pressed forward, each step deliberate, forcing Bale back against the wall of stacked crates. The remaining men froze, realizing the legend before them was unstoppable, human but relentless. Then the final moment came. Elias grabbed Bale, twisted his arm and pinned him against the crates. Handcuffs snapped tight. Bale's chest heaved, eyes wide with rage and disbelief. "This isn't the end," he growled. Elias leaned close, voice quiet but deadly. "It is for you." Outside, sirens screamed, announcing backup. Bale's network, shaken, began to scatter, realizing their leader had fallen. The aftermath was quiet. Police and SWAT swept in, securing operatives, dismantling the last of Bale's plans. Elias, bruised and bleeding, stood on the edge of the warehouse dock, looking out over the harbor. The fog lifted slightly, and the first hints of dawn painted the water gold. Hale arrived moments later, silently, as if the Admiral himself carried the weight of every decision Elias had made. No words were needed. The job was done. Lives were saved. And Redeemer's name, once buried, had returned with purpose. Alone, Elias sat on the dock, cane tapping softly against the wood. He closed his eyes, listening to the water, the distant city, the world still turning. Memories of lost teammates, forgotten missions, and innocent faces he had saved came rushing together. Every notch in his cane, every scar on his body, every name he had carried, they all converged into one truth: redemption wasn't given. It was earned, forged in fire and silence, and carried with courage. For the first time, Elias allowed himself to breathe fully, the tension in his body loosening like fog dissipating under sunlight. The storm had passed. The name had been spoken, feared, respected, and finally understood. And now at last Redeemer could rest. Weeks had passed since the final confrontation at Grayson Docks, yet Elias felt no lighter. The world outside Dryfall moved on, oblivious to the storm that had passed. He returned to the coast, to the small cove where he once repaired boats, the smell of salt and sawdust grounding him. For the first time he wasn't running. The cane, worn and notched with memory, rested against the workbench. Sunlight streamed in through the open window, dust dancing in golden rays. It felt ordinary, almost peaceful, But Elias knew ordinary was a fragile mask over chaos. Admiral Hale arrived quietly one morning, shoes muted on the wooden floor. "They tried to spin your story," he said, voice low. "News, social media, speculation. They call you a ghost, a myth, even a hero." Elias wiped his hands on a rag, not looking up. "They'll forget what really matters," he said. Hale studied him. "Maybe. But they'll remember the name." Elias finally lifted his eyes, pale and steady. "Redeemer isn't for them," he said. "It's for the people who need saving even if they never know who saved them." Hale nodded, understanding more than words could convey. Elias walked into Dryfall, past the shuttered stores, past the streets etched with memory. Children still ran along the alleys, laughing, alive. He stopped at the old rail yard, now silent, and ran a hand along a rusted beam. Memories surged. The boy in Carsick Valley, the children in Port Kestrel, every life he had touched, every soul he had saved or failed to save. Each notch in his cane told a story, each scar a lesson. But here, among the dust and wind, he felt a measure of peace. For the first time he realized he could carry the name without it crushing him. That evening a small crowd gathered outside the local church. Families, veterans, children whose parents had survived Bale's schemes. Some came to see, some came out of curiosity, some simply because a rumor had reached them. A young boy stepped forward, holding a crayon drawing of a bridge over water, tiny stick figures standing tall. Elias knelt, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. "It's yours," he said. "Keep it safe." The boy's eyes brimmed with tears of gratitude. Others stepped closer, hesitant, offering nods, whispered thanks, or simply watching in awe. Redeemer's legend had been spoken, and now it carried hope instead of fear. Later, as twilight settled over Dryfall, Elias stood at the water's edge. The river reflected the colors of sunset, golden and red, peaceful. He carved the final notch in his cane for Bale and the operatives, for the ones he couldn't save and the ones he did. Each line was a promise fulfilled. He whispered softly, not for anyone to hear, "It's done. You're remembered, but the world moves on." The wind carried his words away, scattering them across the town, over the river, and into memory. Admiral Hale joined him, silent, observing the water. "What now?" he asked. Elias smiled faintly. "Now we let it rest," he said. "Redeemer exists only in the moments that matter, and in the choices that save lives." Hale nodded, understanding that some stories never needed applause. Some victories were quiet, internal, and eternal. Elias walked back into Dryfall, cane tapping softly on stone and wood. Children's laughter followed him. The town didn't know his full story, nor did they need to. They only needed to live in the light he had preserved. The name Redeemer would live on quietly, in whispers, in the shadows of courage, and in the hearts of those who would carry it forward. The wind rose, gentle and clean. Elias looked at the horizon and allowed himself to breathe, truly breathe for the first time in decades. The battles were over. The lives were saved. The ghosts had been honored. And the man who carried the name finally felt its weight lifted, not gone, never gone, but balanced. Redeemer had fulfilled his purpose.